What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk to you about optics. So over at my Instagram, I've been getting a lot of direct messages from guys. If you're not following me, it's Yoda_Blaster. Basically they're saying, hey, I bought an AR for the first time. What type of optic should I get? Should I get a red dot, or should I get a scope, or low power variable? So today I kind of want to hash that out and give you guys my 2 cents on what I think in terms of picking your first optic for your AR. So I like to break this topic down into 2 categories. What did you buy? What do you want to do with it? So in terms of what did you buy, that could mean caliber, and then it could also mean the length of the AR in terms of the barrel length. I'm going to go over the caliber portion first, and then we'll jump into kind of what you want to do with it, or maybe what's optimal for your setup. So first and foremost, let's just get 308 and 300 blackout out of the way. You can kind of include 7.62 by 39, the AK Franken guns in with the 300 blackout, or somewhere in between 308 and 300 blackout. So let's start with the 308. So if you just bought your 308 as opposed to building it, most manufacturers make them in a 20-inch barrel configuration. So that being said, if you're the type of guy that purchased one of these, more than likely you're wanting it to both hunt with and use as a home defense setup. So I have kind of a complicated answer for that. As opposed to picking one, I kind of recommend having both. If you're going to hunt with it, where I hunt in Missouri, I don't really need anything more than 6 power. Even if I have a shot out to 300 yards, 6 power does just fine for hunting. So if you're going to put a hunting scope on it, whether that's a 1:6 or a 4:12, I would still recommend a offset or 45-degree red dot, like a micro red dot that you would put on a pistol. I don't have one of those setups, but to give you kind of an idea, is you would have your scope, and then you would cant it over to the side at 45 degrees, and you'd have a red dot off to the side. That way you can still use the gun in the field, take shots out to longer distances, but if you're engaging something closer up, like in a home defense situation, you turn the gun 45 degrees and you can use your red dot. So if you have a 300 blackout, for the most part, the answer is the same. If you got a longer configuration 300 blackout, then go with the scope, whether that's 1:6 or 4:12. It's kind of your preference on how much magnification you need. That particular cartridge, I don't really think you're going to want to take outside of 300 yards. You probably can, but you start to get into like an ethical situation of whether it's humane or not. So I would say just keep it close, go with a 1:6, and then if you decide to use it for something like home defense, that's still a viable option as well. Now let's get into the shorter configurations like you would set up for home defense, like this Aero Precision 8-inch suppressed gun that I have here. This is my home defense rifle. Just put a red dot on it. Honestly, if you're shooting subs through it, especially short and suppressed, you're not really going to get the ballistic side of the cartridge like you would with a lighter weight projectile like a 150. When you're shooting subs like 190 to 210, you're really not going to be stepping the thing out past 200, and at that point you don't need magnification. A dot will do you just fine. Now let's jump into 5.56, and this is where we take your, what did you buy in terms of cartridge and what do you want to do with it. So we know that you bought a 5.56. Now, what is the length of it? Is it an 18-inch gun, or is it a 10.5-inch gun? If you bought a 16-inch and longer gun, you're at the optimal ballistic performance of that cartridge. That being said, if you purchase a low power variable like this primary arms here that has a reticle with built-in holdovers in it, you're going to be able to use those holdovers to their full potential. So a low power variable would probably be the best option for that setup, just because you can really reach out and touch somebody with a 16, 18, or 20-inch gun. Now, the caveat to that is, if you bought a 16 or 18, 20-inch gun and you want to use it as a home defense rifle, you can absolutely do that and put a red dot on it and be good to go. So now let's address the shorter rifles. So that would be 16 inches and under. I'm going to cut it off at like 10.3. I think anything under that for a 5.56 is a novelty gun. I would not rely on that thing to save my life. As you can see here, my rifle is not a 16-inch or longer AR. It's a 10.5, and I still have a low power variable on it. I purchased this to be kind of a do-all setup. This is my home defense gun, like I said. This is my everything else. If you have a shorter AR-15, more than likely you purchased that because you wanted it to be a home defense gun. It doesn't mean that it's limited to that, as you can see with my personal setup. But if you did purchase one that's shorter and you plan to use it just within the confines of your home, obviously a red dot is all you're going to need. With my personal gun, my 10.5 here, I went ahead and put a LPVO on it just because I like the shorter overall package, and I'm aware that the holds are going to be off, but my eyes kind of suck. A red dot on this works fine within my house or within closer distances. Anything outside of 75, 100 yards, and I struggle to see because I'm nearsighted. So I really need the magnification that I get from a low power variable. Also, I just like the shorter package. I can throw it in my truck. It's easy to wheel around, in and out. I just prefer this length. I prefer this gas system. I like the way that it runs. And then with the low power variables, I kind of lean towards them a little bit more nowadays because the 30 millimeter diameter tube, it gives you a bigger field of view in my experience. I think I get a clearer sight picture with this. And then also that etched reticle in there is super crisp. It's a first focal plane, so when I run it on 1 power, it looks like just a dot that's illuminated, which is actually a horseshoe and a chevron. Once I dial it out to 6 power, the Christmas tree shows up and I've got all my holds on there. So basically what I'm saying is none of these rules are set in stone. If you have a shorter AR and you plan to use it as a home defense gun, you'd be well suited with a dot. If you have a longer AR and you plan to use it as an everything else rifle, then by all means put a low power variable on it and you can reach out and touch somebody at distance. But that doesn't mean that you can't swap them up and put a dot on a longer gun and a scope on a shorter gun. I would say if you're like me and you have trouble seeing out past 100 yards, then jump into the low power variable because I run this like a dot on 1 power magnification for close distance engagements, and then once I go out past 100 to 200, I just dial it up and I'm good to go. You can also split the difference with a red dot and a magnifier, but to be honest, I'm not really a fan of those. You're stuck with typically 3 power magnification, or at least it's fixed. And then by the time you add the extra weight and overall profile, it's about the same as an LPVO, but comparatively, the low power variable is more bang for your buck because you can dial in and out and typically go out further than 3 power magnification like you can with this 1 to 6. So maybe that's why we're seeing those get phased out and the LPVO being adopted more and more. One thing I want to touch on that I hear a lot talked about when it comes to red dots and optics is astigmatisms. So I actually, like I said, wear glasses and I do have a moderate to severe astigmatism. Just saw the doctor the other day for a checkup. And I just wanted to confirm that when you do run a red dot, yes, the dot is not perfectly round. If you guys don't know what astigmatism is, it's basically when your eye is not perfectly round, it's more egg-shaped. What this does is it affects the light refraction in your eye, and when you would typically see a dot shape, you can end up seeing more of a smudge or kind of like a curved shape, what have you. Everybody's different. So one thing that I don't hear talked about in this topic is the fact that when you put your glasses on, for the most part, it will mitigate that astigmatism. So if I look through this red dot with no glasses on, yes, it looks more like a smudge than it does a dot. Not a huge smudge. I mean, it kind of just looks like a tic-tac shape. So it's still not perfect, but it's usable. When I put my glasses on, it's almost perfectly round, and it's not really anything that's going to affect my hits. Not to a large degree, at least. So I'm not sure why it's not talked about, but if you do have an astigmatism, obviously test out some red dots. But I would just be cognizant that you don't need to be scared away from the red dots. By all means, keep your glasses on whenever you test them out. And quite frankly, I've never had a time where I've shot without my glasses on, at least on purpose. Even when something goes bump in the night, I grab my glasses before I grab my rifle because I need to see what I'm shooting at. Reasons why I have a weapon light. So it's pretty easy, guys. It's a lot of personal preference. Again, there's really 2 categories. What did you buy in terms of overall length and caliber? And then what do you want to do with it? Is it a home defense rifle or is it a I'm going to go take on the world rifle? So guys, just remember that none of these rules are set in stone. The biggest thing is just to know what you have, know what its advantages are, train with it, and then just know its limitations. I say that about every piece of equipment. So there really is no perfect setup. It's just knowing what you have and knowing what its advantages and more importantly its disadvantages are and training to accommodate for those. That's the video, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below and let me know what type of AR you have and what optic you're using with it. As always, keep shooting.